There we go. Hi, everybody. Jonathan Mills Patrick with you. Welcome to another episode of the Line 12 Institute interviews. And today I have what I call my good friend. We've not got to meet in person yet, but my friend Chris Marr. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on the show. It's really good to be here. I'm quite excited to get involved in this impactful movement that you've got going on. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
good. I'm good. Feeling
yeah,
good.
yeah. Thank you so much. I know the information you're going to share is going to help a lot of people. I get tons of questions about content marketing and marketing in general, and I'm probably not the right guy to ask about that, but I think I know, yeah, I know you are. Before we get started, curious, just first Christmas with Spencer, is that right? Or
Yeah, he's
no?
what? Yeah, he's going to be one on Sunday,
Yeah.
Christmas Day. He's Christmas baby, so he's going to be 1 year old. We've already started all the birthday celebrations, so it's an exciting time, a slightly different Christmas than normal. So yeah,
Yeah, and
it's good stuff.
and they get even more entertaining as they get older. I think one or two you can give them a bow and they're just ecstatic to have it. After
Yeah,
that, you start to give them presents and they play with it and really enjoy it. Chloe's 8, and so we're at that stage where Christmas is just monumental, and so we've been talking about it for days on end or
yeah,
months on
yeah,
end, really. Well,
yeah. I've got a lot to look forward to.
yeah, it should be great. So that's wonderful to see. I just before we get started into some of your tips on content marketing, I just kind of want to give you some props. Really, I think you're one of the most prolific creators of content I've seen, and the reason I think that's a compliment is it's not that you're just producing content. And that's one of the things I personally struggle with is just seeing people create a lot of content just to get noise out there. But your content's very high quality. Is there a particular process you use to kind of get yourself to that point, or is some of it on the fly? Do you mind sharing how you work through that?
Sure. Yeah, thanks very much for that. I think it's an interesting, so picking up on that, I think it's interesting to see what you see because I don't see that, right? So this is,
Sure.
and there's a lesson in this for anyone. In fact, everything that we say today, there'll be a lesson in there somewhere. Try and draw them out. The big lesson there is the difference between noise and valuable content.
Absolutely.
And I've had this discussion quite a lot, either online or in person with people where they feel like they just need to turn up. And yeah, there is an element of that. You do need to turn up and you do need to turn up consistently to be what they call front of mind, right? But really, that's only part of the story. I think being front of mind is great. And I think that maybe over the last 20, 30, 40 years was okay. Like you just shout the loudest and maybe
Right.
people remember about you. But what we want to get to is a place where people remember you for all the right reasons because you helped them, because they trust you, because when they've got a problem, they know exactly where to go to, right? That's a different type of top of mind or front of mind that that goes a little bit deeper. And I think that's the difference between making noise and creating valuable content. So I think that's like one big lesson there already is to create content that people actually get value from and they want to share with their friends, they want to bookmark it, they want to refer to it, use it as a resource. And the process I go through, and this is interesting because although there is like this element of being prolific with content creation, I feel like I've slowed down a lot in the last 6 months. So we had a big, when we had our big conference in June this year, there's a lot of content going out, like just tons and tons of content,
Right. Right.
live
Right.
content, written content, and it's just social content. It's huge. And then we had like the post-conference campaigns that go out after that, and then it kind of died down for me. And a lot of that was to do with coming back to this sort of like what you've kind of mentioned there is like I felt like I wanted to go in a not a different direction with my content, but just make sure that the content I'm creating is valuable, right? So I felt like maybe I'd done a lot of the surface level content, and I hit a bit of a brick wall, and I was thinking, well, what do I need to do next? I want to lead with more thought.
Mm.
Therefore, I had to take almost like a step back and say, well, I need to go and do some more reading, find some more inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
find maybe a slightly different path. And that's what I've been doing over the last 6 months. So although they've still been shipping content, a lot of it's been kind of like live content, which is really easy to create if you once you get used to being in front of the camera and you can
Right.
understand that process, you can just get in there and like deliver a story, deliver a challenge, deliver a lesson quite a short space of time without too much prep. We're talking about 5 minutes of prep.
Right.
So I can take you through that process. I mean, that's really simple for me. And again, you get better at this. So the first time you do a video or a podcast or some sort of live communication, you might be a little bit nervous, you might be afraid of the technology or something might go wrong, or there's lots of fears wrapped up in that in the first part. But once you get used to it and get into your flow, it's really, really simple. And this is something I learned from Marcus Sheridan, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It's just having the structure of question, story, result, challenge.
Mm,
So every time you do a segment or you do a talk or you do something, I'm always thinking, well, what is the question I'm leading in with here? What's the story I can or stories I can share about that topic, that lesson I want to get across, and then leave with a result and a challenge so people can see how that lesson turns into a result, and then leave them with a challenge, a lesson, something that they can go away and do, a call to action, if you want to call it
yeah,
that.
I think that's great. The idea of a call to action. That's one of the reasons that I always start the blog posts and even the interviews when I post them as a blog post. I always start them with a quick summary of of here's how the advice in this content can improve your bottom line. Because I think there's so many people just out they create content, and it has a lot of fluff to it. It doesn't have here's what you can really do with what I'm telling you. So
Yeah.
I think
That's why
that's
that structure matters a lot, because you get a lot of people that'll do maybe the story, but they're not thinking about, well, what's the challenge? How does this
right.
help your business? How can you apply this to your day-to-day whatever? So the structure and the discipline for me has become, and I don't want to say this without, it's become intuitive probably more than anything, right? So for example, I mean, I did a Facebook Live yesterday, which is a piece of, in any way, there's a piece of content, it's valuable, it's going straight to my audience, and that was just based on a conversation I had that day. Right? That's something I've never talked about before. It's
And
not
it
something
just
I've talked
cues
about
you
in a
off to
while.
think about whatever that topic was.
Exactly. And immediately I can just jot down on a piece of paper. I'll literally take an A4 piece of paper, a Sharpie, and I'll make 4 bullet points and I'll put it on my tripod, and that'll be my structure. I don't really know the I don't really know exactly the words that are going to come out my mouth. I'm not
Right?
even entirely sure how long it's going to last. The key thing is though that I'm sharing these stories all the time, and these in this structure, it helps with a lot of things like that then could become a blog article in the future. It could become a segment for a presentation. I might even share that same story on a podcast. And the key thing there for your personal development is that you're working through these stories and you're working through these lessons that you're learning, and that can turn into anything really. And it's just you going through that process of it's a part of learning as well. When you're learning something yourself, is to teach that,
Absolutely.
and that's part of the process. So I don't know if that gives you some insight. It's far more intuitive than it used to be. I used to follow processes like, like writing a blog article would have like a tick list of things that we have to do to put in place. But over time, it's just become far more intuitive for me personally.
Well, I think there is a huge takeaway in that. We talked about it before we started recording. I mentioned that I kind of like to keep these somewhat informal, and I don't
Mhm.
know that that's entirely what you're saying, but to some extent, you're definitely having some pre-planning and some bullet points of things that you're wanting to talk about in the content that you're producing. But it sounds like to some extent, you're also allowing it to free flow a little
Yes.
bit, and so it doesn't come off as very technical and sort of rigid and those type
Yeah.
things.
I think the key is like if you were to cut through it here, I'm just kind of thinking on out loud a little bit here, but I believe that the key to this is just being able to like that structure is really important. Now I could take that structure and I could apply it to a live presentation, I could apply it to a podcast, a solo podcast show, maybe a live broadcast, a blog article, anything. It doesn't really what's important is I've created this ability for me to communicate in a certain way. Doesn't matter what the platform is. So there might be fears around the technology, which you'll definitely get over as you take action. But the key is the ability to adapt. I don't have to adapt to the platforms because I've got the structure
Structure.
and the flow here in my head or in my heart and the way I want to do it. And that means that I don't worry about the situation I'm in or the medium that I'm using. The communication structure's there already, and therefore then that's the one big thing that usually holds people back is they just don't know how to say what they want to say. And I think that's the key skill, that if you work on that skill, the communication skills, which are usually the soft skills that we don't talk about enough, that it doesn't matter what the platform is, or even it doesn't even matter what your strategy is, really. If you can communicate in a way that can get across the story and the challenge and the lessons that you're trying to teach.
So I feel like I've noticed in the last time that most couple of months that I've followed you online and those things that I'm sure you're producing a lot of written content too. But has there been an intentional move from a content marketing standpoint to move toward more visual?
Hmm. Yeah, couple of big things there. Video, I mean, we've talked about video for years in the marketing space, haven't we? I mean, ever since,
Yeah, absolutely.
well, I mean, you could even go back to the invention of the television. You could go right back to that, really. But it is becoming far more prominent in business to expect video. Now, I don't know what the statistics are, but something ridiculous like 52% of consumers will make their buying decisions based around videos that they watch, right?
And why
Something
is that?
ridiculous. Like,
Why do you think that is? Is it the trust factor
um,
that's created by getting to see the person behind the words?
absolutely, it's absolutely to do with that, and it's also just a better way to consume content as well. Like you can consume it almost passively. Like reading can be quite time consuming as well, but you sit there, you don't have to do anything. You can watch something without doing any other activity. So it's somewhat passive in that regard, but I think it's massively to do with trust, and seeing someone either in their workplace or their personality or something like that. So there's this shift towards consumer. Obviously, we have to go with consumer buyer behavior, right? So if
Hmm.
consumers are watching more video and buying as a result, then as a business person, you think, well, duh, I really need to be creating more video because it makes a lot of sense. So when we were at Inbound this year, 2016 in Boston, they said that at least 50% of your content should be video based, and it was all based around this consumer behavior. So I can't remember the statistics. Anyway, it becomes quite intuitive as soon as you realize that consume. Just think about how you consume stuff today. Just think about you as a consumer, sorry, and how
Right.
you buy things today, and just go, well, if that's how I'm buying things, that's the content I'm reacting to. There's a very good chance that that's what you need to do as a business. It's not complex, but as soon as you understand, realize it, it just makes so much sense. So a shift to video. So back to the original question, was a couple of reasons. That was one big one. The second one is it's just easier.
Is it more
I can
natural for you, maybe?
It's more natural for me, but it's
Yeah.
actually less time. Writing a blog article could take me half a day.
Absolutely.
It
I'm
could take
totally
me,
with you on this.
yeah, 2, 3 hours. I can bash out a video in like 10 minutes, easy.
Absolutely.
So, like, and Marcus Sheridan goes on about this as well. He's got his clients creating something like 20 to 30 videos in like 3, 4 hours because you get it all set up, you've getting into the flow, and you just like, you
Knock
get
them
it
out.
all out there. And it's so simple and easy to do. It's far easier to create video now than it ever has been, and people don't expect it to be like a huge quality as far as production's concerned. They're not expecting huge production value. What they're expecting is to answer their question or to
Yep.
solve the problem that they have right now. That's what they expect. So lighting and audio has to be good. The content has to obviously be spot on, but it doesn't have to be a 10 out of 10 as far as production value is concerned. So there's that too. So it's become easier. The technology is there now. We've got it all in our iPhones or our smartphones now. So the barrier to entry for video is so much lower. Facebook are making a massive push. I don't know if you've seen this, but they're doing printed advertising, billboards, bus stops, the side of buses, in prominent cities now to push Facebook Live. It's becoming normal. I mean, I go into Facebook Live and like my cousin is doing Facebook Live now. That was
Absolutely.
never a thing, right? And this is where it gets really interesting. So when you look at marketers are usually the first people to adopt these platforms.
Right.
So Instagram stories came out recently, and then all I saw was just my marketing friends all doing Instagram stories. I was like, this is boring as hell, basically. I was just like,
Right.
I'm not going to check any of these stories out. It's just boring.
Right.
And I think the trick for a platform is to get from the marketer adoption to the business adoption to the consumer
Consumer
adoption,
adoption.
and I think that's where Facebook Live is going now. They're just going massively into that marketplace, but it's still early days, so it's still early adoption stage for live broadcasting. So getting in early now, as a startup business, as a business owner, it's like it's a no-brainer in far as in terms of like it doesn't cost you any money. It takes a little bit of time, but you can produce it so quickly. You can go straight to market, straight to audience with something valuable. Like we're doing a podcast right now. Uh, you'll take this content, you'll edit it, you might chop top until you might not do that much editing, but at the end of the day, you have to do something to turn this into an MP3 and then
Hmm.
an MP4. Then it has to go into YouTube. Then you have to put it onto iTunes, blah, 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 onto your website, whatever you have to do. Facebook Live, straight to audience. Done.
Straight. No, no editing, no nothing needed. Which
They don't
which
expect
requires
editing
that
though,
the.
because
Go ahead.
They don't expect editing though because it's live. So
Right.
clearly in that environment, they're not expecting a huge production either because it's a live broadcast.
Right.
So I think there's a lot to be said about. Well, so to answer the question, that's the sort of probably three or four main reasons why I have lent more towards video. One is personally just because of time as well. So if I'm
Absolutely.
in my office and I'm like, I want to do something, 10-minute Facebook Live video is like, just it makes so much sense to me. I can do it now, and it's not going to take me 3-4 hours to put that together and publish it. It's done. So I guess that's the big reason for me.
Yeah.
But also, it's just become far easier.
Yeah, I think I sense in you something similar to myself, that it's your natural communication state. If I sit down with a research paper I'm writing or something like that, or a white paper, or any of these things that I do, I can spend, as you said, hours editing, working through, trying to get it to come out of here through my hand onto the paper or on the keyboard onto the computer. Whereas if I go and I'm asked to do a presentation at a conference, I go and do them. I tell people all the time, if you've ever seen the movie Old School, Will Ferrell's in there and he's on the debate team, and he kind of blanks out, but he comes up with this brilliant answer. And not that my content's always brilliant, but that's the way I feel when I get up and I speak in front of a group at a conference. I don't get nervous. I don't. It's not hard for me. I always feel like I just get in a state of flow almost immediately, because it's my natural state of communication versus trying to write. It's so
Yeah.
much more difficult. So I can see the value in video, and then taking video and having your structure that you talked about,
Mhm.
and we'll post that in the
Yeah.
blog section so people can see how that structure looks. So taking video and using that structure and then developing your content.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, your thoughts. I mean, I still go back to the idea of there's just so many people producing content. Is it really all that it takes is to be consistent and produce quality content to break through the noise, or is there more to it?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's definitely part of the formula if there is one, is to be consistent. So let me just think. I've definitely got a story here to share with you on this one. It's a yes and no answer.
Okay.
I think consistency it does make or break, because I just think when I look at people there's a couple of reasons why consistency I think is the key, right? One is just consistently turning up, right? So people see you consistently over a long period of time. I mean, the big question is, well, how long does it take to build trust? How
Right.
it it
We're back
who
to
knows?
trust. Yeah.
Yeah,
Strange
yeah.
how
Who
that
knows
works.
how long it takes to build trust? No one knows how long it takes to build trust. All we know is that it takes time, right? So you can't expect to, like, the biggest myth around content marketing, I guess, is like you write an article, you publish an article, someone reads the article, they phone you, they buy from you, right? It doesn't work like that. We know that, and you don't have to be hugely educated to understand that. But trust is the key. That's what we're trying to do, and if we're trying to build trust, we need to understand that it's not going to be that one article or that one podcast that's going to build that trust. It might be an episode of your podcast or a article that you write that takes them over that tipping point to trust you so much that they want to buy from you.
Right.
But it's going to be a building up of that trust over a period of time, and we get our information from so many different sources now. And like you said, there is this element of what Mark Schaefer calls content shock, but consistency. I mean, even Mark Schaefer's a great example of this. Is consistency
Mm-hmm.
over a long period of time has put him in a position to be paid a lot of money to be a keynote speaker all over the world. A more at-home story would be a gentleman called Pete Matthew. Pete Matthew is an independent financial advisor or a financial planner or a wealth management consultant. He runs a small company in Penzance, which is like in the tiniest, smallest location in England, right at the bottom of England.
Right.
And he's managed to command a global audience through his podcasting, right? So about 6 years ago, he got a flip cam out. He went outside and he started recording these videos about how to save money, how to be better with money, pensions, all of the stuff that you, like normal people like me that don't understand about money, can educate us. We're not high wealth people. We're not ready for maybe an IFA or a wealth management company.
Right.
But inherently, he knows that over a period of time, if you get better with money, you're going to want to engage with someone like me. If you make a long story relatively short for Pete, he's done that for 6 years. He went into podcasting. He's now got one of the best podcasts in iTunes. There's no one else in his industry really doing it, because they've said things like, well, we are in the financial industry, we can't do that. But actually, the regulations that Pete just plays within the rules, right? He knows how to do
Sure.
that, and he's done that for so long now that he's become such a trusted person in that space. And you know as well, and anyone that's listening now as well, how much trust you need to engage with an IFA or an independent financial planner,
Right.
and also that financial institutions have let us down a lot in the last 10 years, right? So trust erosion in that space has been huge, but Pete's been there every week delivering huge value to help people get better money. And the reality is that his content has changed people's lives and they've never spent a penny with him. So this is a great example of consistently turning up over time. His podcast is getting over 1,000 downloads a day now. He's like you and me. He's just like you and I. He's running a business. He's a really nice guy, and he's just turned up consistently with this content over a long period of time. He's now getting more leads into his business now through his digital marketing efforts than he does through word of mouth, which traditionally
Which would
that's
normally
where
be the
IFAs,
most. Absolutely.
yeah, that's where they get their business from. So he's changing the game for his business, and no one yet still no one is waking up to this stuff, right? So when someone says, there's the content shock, there's so much content, see if you scratch away from the surface. Very rare you will find people doing it very well in
Ah,
your space, right?
yeah.
They're doing a lot of surface level content, kind of helps, kind of answers questions. It's not very consistent. It's poor quality. You go a little bit deeper. You start to go deep. You start to really put value in there. Forget about the fact you've got a product or a service to sell, and you go out there to help and to build trust. That changes. Like a lot of people don't think like that. They think way too short term in terms of getting business and getting
Right.
customers. Not thinking about how they can build a relationship with an audience, right? So there's two. Those audience, that word is foreign to most business people. They don't think in terms of audience. They think in terms of how can I get more customers. You get more customers from an audience. Build an audience, you will get customers. Build a lot of trust with that audience, and you'll get amazing customers. Customers
Absolutely.
want to stay with you for a long time and tell other people about you. So I think it's about seeing that long term play. You will get results very quickly, but you go deep. So as soon as you start scratching away from the surface level content, you start to realize there's gaps either in the depth of the value that's added through content
Perfect.
or through a geographical niche as well. You can say, well, no one in my area is doing content that well. So there's lots of ways you can differentiate or find the gaps that you can fill in your content.
I think that's so perfect. It's similar to what I tell my wife. So we're in the middle of house hunting potentially right now, and in the past she's been intrigued with the real estate business, but she says all the time, I don't want to go into it because there's so many of them here in our town. And I always tell her, yeah, but none of them are that good. I mean, really, all you have to do is do the right thing and outwork about 90% of them, and you're going to be very successful. So it sounds like your thoughts on creating content, quality content, that yes, there's a ton of noise out there, but most of it to a degree is probably not that great. And if you are on that upper end producing great quality content, it might be easier to kind of crack through and be noticed by your audience.
I think so. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I just think that nothing worth achieving is easy anyway.
Sure.
And I think that you're right. There's plenty of room at the top, is really what you're saying there. And the thing is, with the content marketing thing, I mean, it's a big subject. People are talking about it more now than they ever have. But a lot, I'm telling you that like most businesses think they're doing it, but they're not. And I think if you can educate yourself to a level that's higher than other people and understand it better, then take the action, sorry, and be consistent. I think that's the formula for winning in your space. And remember as well that, or don't forget that it's your audience you're building, not someone else's, right? So we talk about we talk about this a lot, where a consultant might say something like, if you're trying to, I don't know, if you're trying to get customers on social media or through content, they'll say, go where your audience is.
Right.
The reality is you don't have an audience until you earn that audience, right? So go to the platform and be prepared to work hard to earn the attention of those people that should be part of your audience. And it might be that, yes, you take someone away from someone else that's not performing just as well as you are in your space, and they start to come to you for all their content, and or it's completely underserved. There's people there that are looking for information from a trusted source, and they come over to you and they become part of your audience. So you go there and you are every single piece of content you create is about earning that attention. Do not you're not entitled to it. You can't expect it, and when you get it, you're grateful for that attention and the time that people spend with you and your content. And that's a totally different philosophy, I think, than what most business people think like.
That's absolutely perfect, and frankly, might be perfect to end on because I think the amount of value you're going to add to folks in this is probably going to bust most of their brains at this point. So, I really appreciate you taking the time. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave everybody with? Maybe a
Yeah,
one key thing.
I think the one thing I did want to share with you was that without I don't want to go on too long. Like you said,
No,
we've
go
we've
ahead.
added a lot of value there already. But the one big thing, and you talk about, just to kind of bring it back into the objective of the show, which is what you call about the bottom line,
Bottom
right?
line,
Making sure that
absolutely.
impacts the bottom line. And I think we've talked about the top. We've talked about the top of funnel element of content, and I think you do have to see that activity that we've just been talking about, how it drives to the bottom line, right? And I just want to just emphasize this a little bit. One of the biggest challenges in most small businesses and enterprises is getting the sale, right? It's the sales process, and you see people struggling with this every day, having meetings and the potential client taking control of those meetings, and there's like you're on two different sides of the table, right? You've got the client or potential client, and you've got you.
Right.
See, with content marketing, if you do this really well, it puts you both on the same side of the table. It creates like a better client relationship and customer relationship because they don't engage with you until they're ready. And by the time they've actually contacted you for the first time, they've already read your blog articles, have watched your videos. They're not asking like basic questions. They understand how much it's going to cost. They know the quality of your product. And all of a sudden, you're into an entirely different conversation with your prospects about them and answering their specific questions, and it's not about, you don't have to sell to them anymore. So I think content marketing is very much about sales, but it's making sales, it makes the sales process so much easier for you, the business owner, and the prospect as well. It makes it easier for them. They feel like they're making a decision in their own time as well. So it changes all of that for you. And one of our sort of like taglines is content marketing creates better customers. And that's what it's all about. You're building that trust and you're educating people over a period of time so that when they do contact you for the first time, you don't have to sell to them anymore. You're getting a really high quality of prospect into your business. And that's when the relationship really begins. And from that point forward, you have a great client relationship. They tell other people about you. They want to be part of what you're doing, and so on and so forth. And I just think that it's almost like if you start on the right foot
Right.
with content marketing, your business, and although it might seem like a long game in this, in the long run, it will benefit your business far greater than looking at the short term wins all the time.
So speeding up the sales process to an extent just by creating that trust and letting them
Yeah,
get to know you ahead of time.
it
Uh,
speeds it up. It speeds it up. It also puts it at scale as well. So we're talking about if we're talking about rich source of content, podcast, blog, video, this stuff is going to go on your website. People can find it 24/7.
right.
You're not having to answer, basic questions all the time. It's all there on the website. People can type something into Google. They can find your article that helps them right now. They can then read more of your content, and then maybe they'll contact you somewhere down the line once they've maybe done 50, 60, 70% of their buying decisions been made already. And if you've got all that content there, then it helps them to do all that in their own time. Now, the relationship between them and your content is entirely different because they've found it for themselves rather than you pushing it on them all the time. Totally
Absolutely.
different relationship. I think
Absolutely.
it's I think it's the only way to build a business in 2016 going forward. I think you can do it in many other different ways, but I think this is the best way.
Brilliant stuff as usual, Chris. So thank you so much for sharing all
Awesome.
that value to folks. I know they're going to eat it up. Where can everyone find you online?
Sure, if anyone's got any questions or they just want to reach out after the show, just grab me on Twitter at ChrisMarr101 is the best place to get me, and we can take it from there.
Sounds fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time.
That was really good fun. Thanks for having me.
All right, my friend. Take care.
You too.